We'll go ahead and get started for the meeting. Ask you to stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Mahler,
Present.
Councilor Gerson, Councilor Trask, Councilor Gorley,
Here.
Councilor Coleman,
Present.
Councilor Sanchez,
Here.
Councilor Richards.
Present.
I didn't have this on. Does that make a difference?
Let the record show we have 7 present with no absent. Before we get started, I will go over the meeting instructions for online participation in public meetings. Thank you to everyone who is joining us this evening. For members of the public who would like to take part of tonight's meeting virtually, we have some instructions to help you in case you are new to them using Microsoft Teams. To take part, you will need to locate the chat bubble icon to participate in the meeting online. The chat bubble icon indicated with a yellow arrow on your screen now, maybe in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, or you may need to click on the 3 dots you see extended drop-down menu. If you wish to be recognized by the mayor to speak during the meeting, please choose the bubble icon to enter the meeting chat. It will appear on the right-hand side of your screen. In the chat, enter your name, address, and the phone number, followed by the topic you wish to discuss with the council. If you have signed in, you may be called upon to speak at any point during the meeting, but probably during the agenda item you are entering to speak about. You can choose the hand icon also to locate in the upper right-hand corner to indicate you desire to speak. It's equivalent to raising your hand. The mayor, the acting chairperson, or the moderator will ask you to speak at the appropriate time. We'll give you enough who may wish to speak tonight a few minutes right now to enter your name, address, phone number, and topic that you'd like to address the council. In the interest of time, speakers should not repeat the points of the previous speaker. Instead, state you agree with their point or disagree with their point. Each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes. Any extension of that time is in the sole discretion of the mayor or the meeting chairperson per council rules. Those joining by phone will be noted by the moderator for the mayor chairperson and called to speak at the appropriate time. The fact that meeting is online does not excuse poor behavior, and the mayor does retain the right to have people removed from the meeting as stated in council rules. Furthermore, cell phones should not be used in the council chambers by city staff or council during the meeting or for any reason, including text messages, emails, or phone calls. If the member of the public needs to utilize their cell phone for a call, please exit the council chambers. At this time, consent agenda. Motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show we have 7 ayes with no nays. Approval of the consent agenda. At this time, is there any recognitions of visitors or hearing of petitions to come forth before council to be heard? Not seeing anybody online either, so we'll move forward. Old business, request of council action, resolution number 9 for 2021, system development charge fee schedule.
Councilors could look at page 8. You'll see a request for council action. Based on feedback from our meeting 2 weeks ago, I asked Blair to bring both a 3-year and a 4-year. We were missing a member. One of you wasn't sure what you wanted to do. The consensus, however, was a 3-year, but we wanted to make sure we gave you the option to make that decision in case you chose instead to do a 4-year. With that, I'll turn over to Blair, and he can go through this again and the timeline and the history.
Okay, so just to recap the previous meeting, we've been working on system development charges for quite a while now, and this has finally come to an end. We previously last meeting adopted final reading of and the other two project lists also adopted. The final part is actual fees. So everything that was is nothing that actually affects what how we got there, how we projects we spend these funds. Projects not only identify what the projects in that list, also that list is what you have to have. So now we're at the point schedule case measure. Have questions about that. Essentially, they're related. So one focuses on getting to a target rate of 15,000. And everything, all the other uses and types of uses are prorated based on that amount. And then they take the 3-year one obviously takes 3 years to get to that point. The 4-year one takes 4 years to get to that point. And those are all equal percentages just applied across the board. So any questions you have, I'd be happy to take them. As it's written, it would, whichever one you voted on, if it passed tonight, it would take effect July 1st. And but also keep in mind that the numbers present are all based on the methodology, and that methodology and our ordinance both contain clauses that would increase those amounts based on inflation automatically every July 1st. These are relative numbers, I would say.
At this time, any questions of councilors?
Mr. Mayor, I have questions. So Blair, on page 9 of the agenda, and it talks about issues and financial impact.
Mhm.
The last sentence there says SPCs for all other uses. What would that imply? I'm confused because we already say how they're going to be paid and what it's going to be used for.
So what I mean by uses is in the planning sense of a use. A single family home is a use of a property, but so is a multifamily building, and so is a retail business. So what I meant by all the uses being prorated accordingly is the methodology included the maximum rate we can charge for any type of use, whether it's a gas station or a grocery store or a single family home. And it had tables for all of those things. To achieve the target amount, we took just the amounts for a single family home, the typical single family home, and it said, okay, the target rate for that is 15,000. What percentage of the maximum SDC is that? And in this case, it was a little over 75% or so. And so we applied that percentage to all of the charges for all of the different uses that were listed in the methodology. So the maximum SDC for a grocery store, we made it 75% of that amount, and applied that formula across all of them. Does that answer your question?
Yes. May I ask another question? So in the resolution itself, it says that July 1st that year, which I assume is after this year, that the adjustment would be made as far as cost of living, et cetera, right? I mean, there's going to be an adjustment.
The methodology and the ordinance call for an adjustment to be made on an annual basis.
Right.
Cost index
have a $19,000 maximum.
It than that. That's for a single family home. $1,879.
Have to keep adjusting.
Sorry, you're asking if that maximum amount, if we apply the inflationary adjustments, if we're going to reach that maximum amount, and the answer is actually we're not, because that maximum amount is also changed by
Adjusted,
inflation
too.
at the same time.
Thank you. And also I have a question is, can I make an amendment to the resolution as far as the starting date?
That's all on the table. I mean,
Okay.
this is what staff has proposed, and based on feedback from the council. If you have any changes you want to make to this, if they're depending on the complexity of the change, it can be done tonight. If it's too complex and it requires changing the numbers, then we probably wouldn't be prepared for that. But that's certainly your prerogative as council.
Mr. Mayor, before Councilor Gerson, so my question is, if we make that on, let's say, May 1st instead of, so is the next year automatically on July 1st, or is it going to be on May, or is that something that is going to affect the budget, or how do we know? Can it be on May 1st? Every year, or is it got to go to July 1st?
The ordinance and methodology both state that July 1st of every year is when the inflationary adjustment would be
Okay.
made. When it comes to setting these these rates of how you're going to ramp up to your target amount, those can be effective really at any time. The only thing, they couldn't be made earlier than the effective date of the ordinance, which you approved the ordinance at the last meeting, and so 30 days from that time would be the earliest you could have.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? No other further questions. I need a council directive.
And I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second by roll call, please.
Mr. Mayor, can I have a clarification?
Go ahead.
Is that based upon the 3-year escalation or the 4-year escalation?
3 years, sorry.
Thank you.
Pardon me, just to clarify the motion, are you suggesting that it would be effective May 1st each subsequent year as well, or just May 1st of this year for the first bump?
Well, you mean as far as the adjustment is concerned?
So the resolution has in the draft, it was presented to you, it has a July 1st effective date. But then the exhibit that has all of the actual fees has a July 1st effective date for each of the changes to get up to the target amount. And so my question would be then, are you wanting to change that exhibit to make it to May 1st of each of those years, or would this first adjustment be May 1st and then the later ones be July 1st?
I want to get this started.
Okay.
So I'm thinking May 1st for this, and then go to July 1st to be consistent with budget practice, with our budget.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for Brandon. Brandon, is this, if we left that at May 1st, is that going to goof up the budget process at all, or are we okay with that? Because I'm okay with moving it to July 1st too.
Since it's a revenue item, it's not going to mess with the
Okay.
budget at all. It's, if it were an expenditure, it'd be different.
Okay, all right.
You know, it's nice to have that consistency of a July 1 adjustment, but it's certainly something that we can adjust to.
And probably the answer to a question, clarification, that we, in a couple of years, we can make changes, so.
Right. I mean, at any time you instruct staff to bring you a resolution on these fees, they can be changed. That's within your power. The only thing you can't do is raise them beyond what is supported by the methodology and the capital improvements list.
But just my clarification, it goes into effect if it passes on May 1st, but the annual upgrade is still July of every year because that's an ordinance, right?
So that
Right.
for that reason, it would make it more complex. It would be always a major- passes were inflationary adjustment. The
So-
other adjustment.
So they're not changed. That's what my thing is. Just make sure nobody's changing that because we'd have to go back and amend the ordinance to do it.
Right.
Okay.
And so just need to be clear. Different adjustments we're talking. Inflationary adjustment. Now, unless you're that is at
God,
this, but
Mr. Mayor, I think it, Mr. Mayor, I think it should be the same time. I agree with Councilman. Let's get this thing.
I think it would make it more convenient for staff, yes, but it's there is some flexibility. The other is that we do have various projects in, and depending on how they may come as a surprise, maybe something planned for. So nicer to have a little bit of time to.
I have to tend to agree with you. There's stuff that's on the table, there's stuff that people are doing. All of a sudden getting shock factor.
Well, Mr. Mayor, we've been going through this for 3-4 months, however long it's been. If we should probably just know about it. It's coming. And they should know that it's coming this year.
They may know about it coming, but they're not sure when.
It varies from person to person how involved they are and how much they pay attention, and truly we hope that. What I'm often surprised how people don't know about certain things, even though we've been talking about them for months. You never know. Some people don't read the paper. Some people don't use social media at all. Some people don't talk to anyone. The way it is.
Well, we do have a motion and a second, unless there's a change. We have a motion and a second on the table. May, and then July each. Yes.
Mayor Mahler,
Yes.
Counselor Gerson, Counselor Trask,
Yes.
Counselor Gorley, Counselor Coleman,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez,
No.
Counselor Richards.
Let the record show we have 5 ayes with 2 nays. Approval of the STC fee schedule. Discussion only, DEP issuance for capital projects.
During our council training, council had asked the possibility, and I believe in the subsequent council meeting, councilors had asked about the possibility of incurring some debt to get some capital projects done. Director Nish has been working on that, and you have a memo in front of you that he will review for you now.
Sorry. Sorry, I'm dealing with some audio issues. Where did you leave that off? Sorry. So yeah, we did some digging into the debt options as council asked us to do. What you'll find in that memo, and I can certainly answer any specific questions you may have. I don't want to dive too far into it because you all probably have likely read it already. But what you'll find is that right now my proposal is that you don't incur additional debt, and it's not that it wouldn't be a good idea given today's current market rates, but there are other things, other scenarios at play that I think it would be advantageous for the city to wait before incurring additional debt. Market rates are currently on the rise, and so I think that those, given that the Federal Reserve has not yet changed the interest rate, the bottom line interest rate at this point, I anticipate that those will come back down again, and they haven't made any long-term recommendations to increase that rate at this point. The other item being that we don't necessarily know exactly where the economy is going to go from here. Certainly, there is some concern about an overheating economy with current COVID aid distributions, but at this point, it's a little too early to tell. If the economy does not climb as it had before pre-COVID, then those interest rates will come back down again. So our recommendation at this point is to kind of wait a few months before we really tackle whether or not the debt load is a good option. My other concern is the long-term impact of debt for the city. As we discussed during that training, taking on that debt means long-term payments that don't go away. And so if the economy does come back down in any form or kind of levels off, that's something for us to consider. So there were a few other items in that packet. COVID aid dollars being distributed to local governments, cities and counties that the city of Sweet Home will certainly benefit from. And I can't remember. I think that was it as far as kind of the items in the why we should wait category. But if you have any specific questions, I can certainly answer them.
Any questions of council?
Mr. Mayor, I do.
Go ahead.
Brandon, the one thing that I don't see is the cost of construction being included in this scenario. So do you have any information on that? I think I saw it was 4%. It's increasing by 4%.
I've heard various numbers. I've heard 4, I've heard 6, and I have heard 7% each month, basically. The economy is at a point right now where we're starting to see some leveling off. The housing market, homes are not moving as quickly, which tends to indicate that the when the housing market starts to cool off, then construction starts to cool off as well, supply and demand type things. So I can't say for sure whether the construction industry will continue to climb or not, but given where we sit today, my estimate or my guess is that it will not continue to climb like it has over the last several years.
Okay, because that would be my only concern, is just pricing us out of the
Right.
construction market by not taking advantage of a low interest
Sure.
loan at this time. The other thing that was in here was we don't have the capabilities to get these projects out to bid quite yet. So maybe if we took that savings of the $750,000 and hired somebody full time to get those done, if that's not what Greg does, then we could get those projects ready to go prior, and so we would be able to get that loan in a couple years.
So we're working on that. That's the point of the engineer of record, and that's one of the reasons Preston was here last week, and he talked about all of those projects that we're trying to get lined out. We would anticipate having that all ready to go within a couple of months. We'll at least have a prioritized list. Council can then select from that list. Then we can start working out for some planning of how to pay for that and for the bid documents to be prepared as well.
Okay, thank you.
So Brandon, I felt this was a very succinct explanation for us, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councilors? Okay, moving on. Information only. Partnership with Ameresco for replacing city streetlights.
Begins on page 24. Excuse me. This begins on page 24 of your council packet. I'm going to turn this over to Brandon and Blair. I think they're going to kind of tag team this. This is an effort by city staff to accomplish a couple of things. Number one, lower some costs in our energy bills. But two, to brighten up our community in the evening hours when it's awfully dark downtown. I'll let Brandon and Blair take it from there.
So we have some folks that are joining us from Ameresco, and we will introduce them in just a minute, but they do have a short video clip that they would like to show before they kind of get into their presentation. So I'm going to play that here in just a second.
While Brandon's working on that, I'll just comment that when I first arrived in this position, one of the first things Ray told me about projects that we wanted to get done was brightening up the lighting, and it was something that we were keeping our eyes out for. And this company and the way the method of improving the lights is probably one of the most economical ways I can think of to do it. So without really much of any capital expense on our part, it would basically pay for itself through the savings, which is really ideal and attractive. So we're glad that we found this this method, and we hope it plays out the way it's thought to play out. But I'm eager to hear your thoughts after you hear from the company and after we talk about any questions you might have.
Ameresco works with clients to develop projects that are going to
Okay, I don't think the video is going to play from my computer. So let me do this. All right, we're not going to play the video, and instead we're just going to let Ameresco talk about what they offer. So,
Sorry, guys.
We have Joseph and Brian from Ameresco. They are joining us remotely, and we'll throw their pictures back on the screen. So when they show their faces on the camera, you'll be able to see them. But they're going to walk through their presentation. They do have the video queued up and may try to screen share it. And if they have better success than I, then they'll be able to display that. Otherwise, we'll go through their PowerPoint presentation and they can kind of walk you through what they do. You'll have to.
Hello all, can you hear me all right?
All right. Good evening. I think I heard Brian, so I'm guessing everybody else can hear us too.
We can hear you.
I got some nods there. Great. Okay. Yeah, we'd like to queue up the video if that's okay, and it'll just take us a second. Nice little introduction. And you recognize a voice if you know Mary Endicott from City of Redmond. He's one of our presenters on this video.
When I first heard about this approach, I thought, is this really too good to be true?
Ameresco works with clients to develop projects that are going to pay for themselves over the life of the equipment that's installed.
We guarantee our work. So if we guarantee and say that we're going to save you energy, we stand behind it.
We rigorously audit facilities to determine the energy savings that are available.
We can make the building operate, function more effectively, more efficiently, and save those dollars at the end of the day.
The decrease in cost to you ends up paying for the project with the improvements that we make over time. We also save money. It's not only good for the pocketbook and the bottom line for the city, but it's also good for the environment and the community as a whole.
All right. So thanks for watching. I think the video was shorter than it took to queue it up, so there. Sorry, Brandon. I know technical difficulties are not easy this day and age, right? So, no, we wanted to say thank you, Brandon. Just a quick question: do you want us to share the slide deck, or would you like to share it?
No, that part I can actually handle.
Okay. All right. Well, we prepared a couple of slides, just some visuals to keep everybody interested and paying attention here. But as Brandon's bringing that up, I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm Joe Mankiewicz, and I'm in my second year in business development with Ameresco. I'm very excited to be here. My roots are in energy and energy systems. I'm a Naval Academy graduate, and before Ameresco, I spent 9 years as a nuclear submarine officer. So even though not putting up nuclear power plants around here, I think the energy service industry is such an amazing thing and just a great growing sector. And Ameresco has been a great home for me for the last 2 years. And this is my associate, Brian.
Hey everyone, my name is Brian Jewett. I am also in my second year here at Ameresco, and I am sitting in my living room right now presenting. So very excited to be here, and I appreciate you guys' time.
Yeah. So Ameresco is an energy services company. It's an ESCO. That's a term you'll hear throughout the presentation, which we'll keep brief. But as you saw in the video, we provide turnkey services for infrastructure improvements that are related to energy and energy savings. We bring funding strategies to these projects using utility bill savings to pay for projects, often without the need for any upfront capital. And we're here to talk about a self-funding streetlight upgrade to LEDs for the city of Sweet Home. So I'm going to hand it over to Brian. He'll take us through a little history of Ameresco and our process, and then I'll take us through some of the findings of our initial feasibility study and potential paths that we could take with you guys. So next slide, please. And Brian, take it away.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Just a quick background about Ameresco. We started in 2000. We went national in 2010, and we're really almost at the tipping point, right, where our clients are telling our stories of success. And we're really excited to be here because this is such a great opportunity for the city. You can see some local experience up there. City of Bend, Troutdale, Milwaukee, St. Helens all did streetlight conversion projects, and something up there actually Oregon Department of Transportation Region 1, we're just finishing up converting all of the highway streetlights. So if you drive around Portland at all, you've probably seen a difference, maybe in some of those tunnels specifically. Next slide. Yeah, some advantages of working with an ESCO, specifically Ameresco. We have a really unique partnership with Pacific Power to be able to use the energy savings to upgrade those streetlights in a turnkey service. This allows the city to utilize those savings, alleviate the need for capital investment, and also focus on the design standards for the city and for Pacific Power. A lot of times those get overlooked, focusing on specific neighborhoods. And we also add a GIS system for all of our streetlight conversion projects, so that the city is able to see where the lights are, if the lights are on, what kind of make they are, how bright they are, etc. So it just adds to your ability to look at your streetlights. Great. So single source of accountability. This is a way to, or we like to say Ameresco is an extension of your staff, right? So we mitigate a lot of that technical and financial risks of the construction. And by selecting Ameresco, the city of Sweet Home fulfills its public procurement requirement. So that means we can look at local subcontractors. We can look at best value of subcontractors. We can avoid low bid. We can look at the best equipment to install. And we're also going through the process from design to implementation, and also coming in the back end in measure and verification to make sure our guarantees are met, make sure the lights are on, and make sure that everything is working properly. Great, so this is just kind of the process and how this works. You can see there on the far left, that dark blue of feasibility. This is starts as a concept idea. This is where I reached out to the city and asked, is this something you want to look into? And we kind of dove a little bit deeper, and at that first triangle right there, that's kind of where we're sitting at. Yep, right there, that's the concept. We're sitting there right before procurement, and at this point, I'm going to pass it back to Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So long story short is there's a process, and this is a process that we've been using for over 20 years with the Ameresco, and it's pretty consistent. It's based on the state legislative guidance in the Department of Energy, and it takes us through various decision-making gates. And Blair actually had mentioned in his introduction for us that he hopes that this plays out the way it's intended. And the great part about our process is that we build in multiple decision gates along the way before you make any financial commitment to the project. And that's where we are right now. Again, Brian said we're in feasibility, where we've shared some information. We've looked at your utility bills. We've looked at the street lights themselves. And what we have done is we have conducted a qualification study, both for the city and for Ameresco. We're interested in finding the win-win for organizations where we truly can say that there is a self-funding project opportunity in your city, and specifically with your streetlights in this case. Okay. So that part is, we've checked that block, and that's why we're here to talk to you. The next decision gate is also a non-financial decision gate, and that is the selection of Ameresco as your ESCO. And we had also mentioned before that we have a very unique agreement with Pacific Power, where we are the only energy services company providing the turnkey process for converting streetlights, Pacific Power owned streetlights, to LEDs. And that's a great place to be, since we have proven ourselves over and over again, and through their vetting process, and of course working with other Pacific Power customers, municipal customers. So we have that trust built, and that puts us in a very unique position. And that also opens the door to be able to kind of streamline the process, the procurement process of selecting through a direct select method. And there's a number of those that you can use: cooperative purchasing. There's an intergovernmental agreement with another city that's used our services before, or if you have your own internal ways of selecting us. And of course, there is the RFQ method, which is a request for qualification of ESCOs. But again, being the only provider of this specific set of circumstances, then you probably only have one respondent. But at this point, again, we're not financially committing. You're not financially committing yourselves to us, but you are committing for us to dive deeper into the process. And we present you with a project development proposal where it is a full deep dive into the streetlights, the actual design and conversion. We start building the GIS system that Brian had mentioned, and you really get a full understanding of the financials, both the energy savings, any grant opportunities or incentive opportunities from the utilities, and of course then what the financials of the project would look like over time. And we're gonna dive into that in just another slide here. So on the left shows some information that we've gathered with you and with your team, and on the right shows the mechanism for how we address this savings pays for performance. And you have about 900 lights. You pay about $150,000 a year, and that's just for the Pacific Power street lights. There's the extra $5,000 of the few street lights you own downtown, which we can also address. But what we found in that blue there is you could save nearly half of that energy bill by converting to LED, $73,000 in savings. And again, that would be the number that we would deep dive into and guarantee. And when I say guarantee the energy savings, when we put that guarantee out there, if your savings is less than what we have calculated and guaranteed, we will literally cut the check for the difference out of our own pocket to make up that, and then we'll go find out where we got it wrong. It's a rare occurrence, but it has happened in the past, and we've corrected it and made right. So we're true to our word there. We going into the mechanism for how we fund these. It's called Energy as a Service, and it's essentially an annual service payment that is made to Ameresco to out of the energy savings and a percentage of the energy savings to fund the project. And we've estimated, and again, this is high level, but it estimated about a 7-year service period or payback period. And you can see the kind of before, during, and after shows that before is what we're in right now. You're paying $150,000 a year in energy for your streetlights. As soon as you go into construction with us, which is a fairly straightforward and timely process, you immediately gain savings. And the service payment is a percentage of that savings. So right off the bat, this becomes a cash flow positive project for the city. And again, that's all adjusted on how you want the financials to work out. And then in the end, after the 7 years, and your savings is your own, right? So that additional savings and for the length of the street lights, and these days LEDs are 25 plus years. That's a good amount of savings for the city to gain there. Okay. And it's not only about energy savings, right, and utility bill savings. We do our best to engage with the city in terms of the public impact as well as the environmental impact of these projects. It's a great opportunity for public outreach and literally see what we're doing and then talk about the savings and talk about the energy savings. We provide press releases as well as reporting on any factors that would matter to the city, say greenhouse gas reduction or footprint reduction equivalents, and any of that the city would like to share in some kind of a public outreach. I don't need to read back your goals to you, but we feel that these three, at least our project at least touches on them in some way, which I think helps move the mission along and does a good service for the people. And I forgot to mention, are there any questions so far? I haven't really stopped. Apologies.
Any questions of councilors? No,
Okay.
we'll continue.
All right, thank you. So going back to that process, where can you go from here, and what are your options? ultimately, this slide really kind of answers, in a frank sense, why partner with Ameresco or why partner with an ESCO to do this. Right, the do nothing scenario is just maintain as you currently are, what you're paying, and as streetlights burn out, they get replaced one by one. That's a very long process, and it definitely doesn't take advantage of any of the immediate savings. Doing it yourself. In our experience, the timeline and the manpower required for the DIY method is quite significant. And we definitely have been able to show comparisons of our process costs versus the potential costs of the DIY method, and the significant difference and savings, even by partnering with us for our fees and what we take. The ultimate goal is to, like Ray had mentioned, brighten the city and get it to where it needs to be. Our expertise in this field really adds to the fact that we fully map out your system, and we take into consideration design standards, equipment risk mitigation. We consider neighborhood specifics, right? So brightness and color standards, residential shading, right? So if a street light is close to someone's property and they don't want it shining onto their property or in their window, we go that far to that individual street light to make sure that it meets the standard for that resident in that neighborhood. Dark sky analysis is another thing, and we have a lot of Central Oregon clients. It's very important for dark sky analysis and making sure that the uplight is not any additive uplight to the current situation. And what we found is they're mostly a lot better, right? LEDs seem brighter, but they are very direct in where they shine their light. So there's a number of reasons, and I can go down the list of reasons. But we truly highlight the ones where we have on the board there. We're an extension of your team. It's a manpower shift, and we take full responsibility for the execution of this project from soup to nuts. There is no capital required in this calculation up front, and the service fee that we put forth to you is guaranteed through the utility savings that pays for it. So a lot of advantages, and we're good at what we do, and we're true to our word. So we like to build these relationships with cities and help you get this done. So, and as we're looking to kind of the next steps, again, as we alluded to a little bit earlier, the next step is that selection process, and there are options, and we're happy to operate however you and your procurement team would like us to go that method. So I'd like to kind of share this slide with Brandon a little bit and see if there's any more questions. But yeah, go from here.
So included in the request for council action is information regarding how the city would select Ameresco as their agent for this project. Sorry, we're gonna mute. Just click next to their names on the dots and mute. There we go. Okay. There are two items in our local contract review board policy document, which was included in your council packet, that would allow us to choose Ameresco as the team to do this project. One is the sole source selection. As Joe mentioned, they are the only team the Pacific Power has said okay to work with regarding changing out these lights. Kind of limits our options in that regard. The other option that we have is a piggyback contract. And so the city of Medford, when they did their request for qualifications or request for proposal, I can't remember which one they did, but when they did their process to select an ESCO to do their streetlight conversion, they specifically added a section in their bid documents that said that anybody signing on for this with this contract would need to allow for other local government agencies to sign on with a separate contract, but under similar provisions. And so both of those meet our exemption requirements that would allow us to move forward without going through and finding two other companies that could do this work, or putting out our own request for proposal or request for qualifications.
Questions of counselors?
Mr. Mayor, if I may. This is for Joseph and Brian. I'm just curious, the average contract cost of this, you said this, we save a lot of money. What is the typical percentage that the contract costs out of that savings?
Oh, that's a great question. So the percentages and fees that we charge are based on the labor and materials only for these types of projects. And, that also includes the construction management fees and things of that nature. We don't set a specific percentage, but our methods are completely open book, which means that as we build the specifics for this project, you will see, before making the commitment, you will see what the costs will be. And, typically they're in line with any other standard contractors of these kinds. And it's like a, without getting too detailed, I'd say, probably like a 9% fee on just the labor and material of the subcontractors. When it comes to the savings and things like that, we don't judge it off of a percentage of the savings.
So I was just curious, you're selling it with we're saving this amount of money, which I love the lights and I want to do the LED lights, but I'm just curious, we'll find out how much that will cost when we get to the next phase. So it may not be a savings because we're going to spend it on contract services.
So here, and yes, but you would not be on the hook for that, which means that the project development phase is it's a fee-based proposal that just covers our costs for the deep dive in, what we call an investment grade audit into your streetlight conversion. That fee, let's say it's $20,000. And that's just a number I'm pulling out of the air. But once you're committed to that deep dive, the end result must be a project that meets your financial criteria. So in this case, a self-funding project within the timeline guardrails that we have previously agreed upon in the contract. And if it meets that criteria, then we hope that you would go ahead and roll into the project with us. And that $20,000 then gets added into the overall cost of the project. So again, no upfront cost. If we come back and for some reason our initial calculations are totally off for some reason, then, and we say, we're sorry, this is not a self-funding project anymore, you do not owe us that fee. And that's, again, why we do the initial qualification of the project and why we look at it ahead of time and ask for the utility bills and things like that to get a good sense that there's a self-funding project here.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for the question.
Mr. Mayor, I got a couple questions. Did I hear you say that there's grants to help us with that? Is that true?
There are grants, so the Energy Trust of Oregon, for example, and things of that nature. I know that, and I'm just speaking out of just experience here, the grants for 2021 are going to be significantly more limited than the grants for 2020 because ETO did a lot of streetlight work in 2020 and actually dipped into the 2021 budget. So those grants, we will help apply for you and give you all the necessary information to the organization for which we're applying. But those are not part of our guarantee. So when we're saying that $73,000 a year savings, that does not include the grants.
Yeah, I could understand that. So can you tell me what the width of the lighting difference between the junk that we have out there now? Because my street light flickers and goes off and on. I know what you're talking about. So do you change that globe on there? Is that what that's called? To make that clear? Because, like on your car headlights, those things get all goofed up and you can't hardly get them cleaned up. How does that work? And what is the width of the light? Is it way farther? I'm sure it must be.
Well, so what we're going to do in the process of building that GIS database is each neighborhood has its own characteristics, and there are neighborhood types that are standardized through Pacific Power. And And so those lights that you see flickering or might be angled or one way or the other, we correct all of those to the standard. And we go a step further by confirming with the city that that's the standard that you want to maintain, because ultimately it is your city, even though it's a Pacific Power owned light. And so, yes, we replace the head, if it's a Cobra head or something like that, but the head of the light, we maintain the pole and the electrical wiring inside. And then the fixture itself looks similar to what you have, except that the LEDs are directional. And so as they are lined inside the Cobra head, we can purchase them with particular angles set to them to meet that design standard. And then there's ads, right? So again, like I mentioned before, when it comes to the particular residence, and let's say you have a resident who's just, I don't want this light in my yard, we will go that extra step and add that deflector and make sure that everybody's happy.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I got a quick question. I'm going to. There's, as far as I can see so far, the Pacific Power has already changed some lights throughout the town with LED.
Mm-hmm.
And why isn't Pacific Power not picking up the tab?
That's a great question. And the main reason is that they do not have the manpower or the capital or the mandate to do so. And that's a bit of a harsh, I guess, way of saying it. But they have made this partnership with us in order to, utilize the methods that they have currently available to them, and that we have available, or you have available to yourselves, to be able to utilize this. At the same time, they've also incentivized it by adapting new rate structures and tariffs specifically for LEDs in order to make these more economically incentivized for cities to do this. If Pacific Power had the teams to be able to go out and do it, they would. And at the same time, it would be a waiting game to see who gets to go first. It's a big territory.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Ms. Mayor.
So I'm kind of confused here. We talked about replacing just the lights. I'm gonna switch you. Sorry. Thank you. It's always an issue for me. So we've had some conversation about just replacing lights, but there's an implication here that we're talking about changing out the poles too. Is that in the price? Is that what we're talking about? Is a bigger picture here and choosing new poles? What are we doing? Are we just talking lights or the whole unit?
I can answer from a general perspective that Ameresco would, to some extent, be able to manage and change poles as the city sees fit. The addition of lights to certain neighborhoods was brought up in a previous conversation. Even maybe removing a pole or two. The complication there is, of course, these are Pacific Power owned, and so we would have to just coordinate with Pacific Power. The replacement of a pole itself is strictly additional capital, and so there's no savings associated with adding poles. And of course, when you add poles, you're adding to the energy usage. So then the savings goes down, the usage goes up. So that calculation could be adjusted. At the same time, the overall mechanism for the service time frame, which we ballparked at 7 years, is associated with a certain capital dollar amount for the overall project that eventually we get paid back for. As you extend that timeline, you could incorporate more work into that. You build, each year of savings becomes an additional, in this case, $73,000 in capital towards a project. So that also is a consideration if the city would like to do more with the savings. But again, that would all be a conversation between the city, Ameresco, the Pacific Power, and we would be able to manage that for you 100%.
Just to get further staff perspective on that issue, we initially looked at it simply as just replacing what the light only that we have, and certainly there are options with other changes, but like you said, it's important to recognize there's not an energy savings associated with that, and so depending on what we would add, you could run the risk of making it no longer a self-funding project. That being said, I think some of the areas where we want to improve our streetlights and maybe change the poles are things that are more aesthetic, things that are more decorative, such as our downtown. And my suggestion would be that the streetscape plan that we want to adopt would be the appropriate venue to look at replacing poles and replacing more of the structure than just the light.
Because that's what I was wondering, if it was just a cost-saving measure or if it was a streetscape issue. If it's a streetscape issue, then we should be able to know if we replace poles, will they have power plugs? What is the typical cost of each pole? And what are we looking at here overall? Yeah. What is the real goal?
Right, and with the streetscape plan, the main issue is that the lights that we have in our downtown are aimed at vehicles, not pedestrians. And so that's something that we would want to look at through that mechanism. This is simply seen as a savings.
I understand some of the benefits, but one question is going to come up is some of the unimproved areas of our community. How is that going to be handled?
Well, again, we went to this initially for cost savings, and the intended consequence was brightening up the downtown area. I think Ameresco, from what I understand, and they can correct me, is willing to do whatever work we ask them to do, but we need to understand that's going to extend the payback period, just like your car. If you go to buy a car and you want some more features in the car, that price goes up and you extend your payments or you make a higher payment. So again, they can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're open to doing any of those things. We do have a couple of places around town in neighborhoods where we know we would like to see an additional pole. As we start diving into this with them, then we can certainly address those, but we're still very much at a superficial level and have not gotten into those details.
No, I agree, the goal and the benefits of this, but I can just see you're going to get some citizens come forward and say, how about me?
Well, anybody that has a street light, it'll be upgraded.
No, but there's areas like say they don't.
Right.
And they're going to say, how about me?
So one thing to keep in mind, one of the reasons why this works is that Pacific Power doesn't swap out anything until it dies, right? That's their way of doing business and their way of controlling their costs. Now, that doesn't apply to brand new lights. You know, throughout the history of the city, or the city's relationship, Pacific Power puts in the light and owns it and then charges the city. There's no reason why we can't continue to do that. And the lights that Pacific Power put in would be LED lights. They don't put in, we're not going to have them put in older technology. So it seems to me that identifying those areas and and possibly using some of the savings from this project to essentially go through Pacific Power's normal route for adding additional light poles in other places is perfectly good use of that savings. And we probably I would recommend going that route unless there's some sort of discount that we would be looking at of doing the same thing through Ameresco.
So I would really love to get into the weeds on this, so I'm going to really avoid that.
Thank you.
I think what you're asking is to move forward with a couple of proposals to come to us and let us see what the potential of this would be, cost savings, what kind of services you provide. And I'm in favor of that.
Yeah. So again, as a policy board, you set a budget. This will all operate within that budget. So this is really kind of an informational item for you. what we will do as staff is try to get the most out of that budget. And if that includes adding some additional lights, we are going to certainly pursue that. The best way to do that, we will work that out and figure out the most cost effective and efficient way to do that. So yes, if that answers your question.
Yes, I would love unified poles going through town. Yes, I would love light sockets on them and the ability to still hang our own banners. But beyond that, there's pie in the sky right now. So
I was asking only the questions because you got media in the room and they're going to publish this and you're going to have questions come back with that. What I'm asking.
I expect a text from Benny. Usually they occur about Thursday afternoon, right? With questions. Sometimes, yeah.
How much does it cost after, do you think it's going to cost after the initial 7 years and you've got back your initial money and we aren't asking for extra things for the next 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years? What is the plan then? Do you expect a fee every month out of the savings because you're doing what?
I can answer this one, Joe.
Oh,
So
okay.
once we've gotten past the point at which we have paid off the project to Amoresco, that's it. The city's relationship with Amoresco is done for that project. At that point, the city would reap the benefit, the full cost savings benefit of the project. So whatever the LED savings cost is, the city's the general fund, where we pay for streetlights currently, would benefit from the full savings.
They don't stay on.
They do
don't
not
stay on board to monitor anything with.
Essentially, we finance the project with the energy savings. And then once we have paid off the project, we reap all of the energy savings.
Okay, I just didn't know if they had a monthly thing that they expect to,
No.
like web or whatever.
Mr. Mayor, I got a couple questions. I used to be employed with a communications business. You notice I didn't use that 4-letter word. So if you find a pole that Pacific Power Light has that's defective, and I've seen a bunch of them, so you're going to make them aware of that, and they're responsible for replacing that pole that's not a good pole, because 99% of the poles that are around are not telephone poles; they're power poles. And so, is that something that they are going to have to do, or are we going to have to pay for that?
Right. So the pole is owned by Pacific Power. And
Yeah, I understand.
If there is a defect in the pole found during our investigative audit, we would immediately bring that to the city's attention, and that would be addressed through the normal response to Pacific Power, basically the complaint awareness, and then Pacific Power would be responsible for making that pole safer or whatever is wrong with it that violates the regulations.
Okay. Because if you move a pole, if you have to replace one, you don't put it in the same hole. That's not the way it works. They move it.
No, absolutely.
And that's a lot of work. But anyway, okay, thank you.
Yeah. The intention should not be for us to move poles unless there is a specific reason to do so.
Okay, I have one more question, Mr. Mayor. So when this process is all done, you're done, you've moved out, blah, blah, blah. So if we want to add lights, will you guys come and do those for us then at a different cost or another cost?
We could always go into a second phase of project work with you, absolutely. But once the agreed upon number of streetlights are converted and our measurement and verification has been met, then that project then just becomes the what, like Ray mentioned, the financing period, and any operational replacements or anything like that is still the responsibility of Pacific Power. If you wanted to later on, let's say a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever it is, add more streetlights and you would like to engage Amoresco to do so, then we're available for that as well.
Okay.
Basically, Joe is saying that he would love to come back and work with the city of Sweet Home anytime we want.
Yeah.
For a price.
Can you climb poles? You and Brian,
Me
are you able
personally?
to climb poles and do that on your own on the side or what? I'm just kidding. Thank you. You answered my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm a little bit new to this kind of process as far as money's concerned, but so you're saying that there's $73,000 a year annual savings, approximately. That's what you project.
Yes, ma'am.
Over 7 years, that's about $511,000, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you saying that only a portion of that would be used by you to complete whatever projects we select? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I would also like to add we did include the cityscape, the streetlights downtown that are city owned in that projection, which would be a capital cost as they are city owned. But that is another factor that we added in there, just at the request of the conversations we had earlier.
Mr.
No.
Mayor, can I ask one more?
Yeah, go ahead.
Brandon, you were saying that for the contract, it could be a single source or a piggyback. Is there some advantage to the piggyback versus the single source?
At that point, it's kind of semantics. The piggyback just means that if there was something specific that Medford got, it would be included in our contract as well. Mm-hmm. So, and that's something that as Blair and I move forward on engaging with Ameresco further, we'd kind of review.
Oh, that's not decided today. Okay, thank you.
We have
that's on specialized services.
Right. We have the Medford information so that we can kind of weed through that and figure out, are there things that we would like to have in ours that aren't initially included? So,
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other further questions? Thank you, gentlemen, for all your information and your presentation. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council members and staff. Thank you.
Did you say you were in the military?
Yes, sir. Navy.
Well, thanks for your service. I really appreciate you guys.
Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you. Moving on, request for council action 2021 overlay project bid posting.
This begins on page 49 of your council packet. Essentially, staff has done a little bit of road work this year. We tested out some new technology, put it in air quotes, new to us, maybe is a good term. We have some money left over. We want to review the best way to utilize that. And with that, I think we're going to turn it over to Trish.
Not all for the one topic. Good evening. So our goal right now with this RCA is we'd like to pave some streets, and we've selected some low-hanging fruit that we can get done quickly that doesn't have a lot of ancillary work to it. So we reviewed our capital improvement plan, and we selected streets that are high priority, that need work, that we're spending a lot of staff time fixing potholes and such, but that also don't need to replace the water line first or to replace the sewer line first, that sort of thing. So these are ready to go, ready to pave now, and they can be done quickly. We have identified two different funding sources. So this year's budget has $280,000 in it for overlays. We spent some of that on the 29th Avenue chip seal. We still have about $242,000 remaining. There is also ODOT money that we can use that's further discussed in another RCA after this. And so we decided that in the interest of getting some pavement down quickly with the local funds, we'd like to do two different paving phases so that we're not holding up the entire project on the speed of ODOT. There's a list in the RCA that shows which streets we plan to pave in which phase. And the engineer's estimate for the first phase deliberately a little bit exceeds our available budget so that if we get lucky and the bids come in lower than expected, then we can get the most work done with our money. But it's broken out into schedules so that if the bids come in as we anticipate they will over budget, then we can pull something out and move it to the second phase. So we have flexibility to not exceed our budget, but to also take advantage if we happen to get lucky with low bids. We also shuffled some of our capital projects based on the ODOT highway ramp project that they're going to be starting construction on, I believe, later this year, so that we're not conflicting with ODOT while they're working on ramps and we're trying to do work at the same time. We just want to avoid any of those conflicts. So some of the streets that we had identified as high priority in our capital plan, we've decided it would probably be better to wait a little bit on those, give it a year or two until ODOT is done. We've added some streets north of the tracks to kind of equalize how much pavement we want to get laid down to help benefit the citizens. And we're also planning to do as much work as we can in-house. So a lot of the prep work that typically gets bundled in with the contract, we're going to do as much of that as we can in-house, repairing some of the base, doing some of the concrete cutting for driveways, doing the gravel transitions to gravel driveways, that sort of thing. Are there any questions?
Any questions, councilors? Go ahead. Continue. Go ahead.
Trish, just one question. Now, this is in this budget right now.
Yes.
Okay, we're not getting money ahead of ourselves or ahead of ourselves for next month. Okay.
Yeah, and if this is approved to post this solicitation, we'll post it tomorrow. Bids would close April 20th. We'd bring it back for contract approval to council April 27th with anticipating construction in May.
Any questions of councilors? Okay, thanks, Trish. Yeah, I'm waiting for any more further.
Yeah, no, we need
Okay.
a motion to.
Okay, I need a council directive.
So moved as recommended.
I have a motion second by roll call, please.
Counselor Richards,
Yes.
Mayor Mahler,
Yes.
Counselor Gerson,
Yes.
Counselor Trask,
Yes.
Counselor Gorley,
Yes.
Counselor Coleman,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
Let the record show I have 7 ayes with no nays. Approval of the 2021 overlay project bid posting. Next, request for council action, surface transportation block grant fund exchange program.
This begins on page 88 of your packet. And it's an interesting exchange program, and we'll let Trish go ahead and explain that to you.
ODOT is sort of the funds manager for the federal transportation money that Sweet Home receives from the federal government. And we have the option to use that money directly on projects that qualify for federal aid. However, doing so, you have all of the red tape that comes along with using federal funds, environmental studies, archaeological studies, all that stuff. And it is very impractical to use that funding directly on local scale projects because the cost of those studies can exceed the cost of your construction work. So to help with that issue for local governments, ODOT offers an exchange program where for 6 cents on the dollar, the exchange rate is currently 94 cents per dollar. So for that exchange rate, we can give ODOT our federal money They'll use it on their big multi-million-dollar projects where it's worthwhile to use that money. And they will, in exchange, give us ODOT money that comes from the State Highway Fund. And it is much easier to spend. It doesn't have the same level of red tape to use that money. And Sweet Home has participated in this program many times in the past. It used to be an annual agreement that was specific to each project. So we would have to execute a new agreement with ODOT every time we did an overlay if we wanted to use those funds for that street. They have since revised the program, and now it is a 3-year agreement that is open-ended is not quite the word I want, but it's meant to capture any of the work we want to do in those 3 years that is qualifying as an eligible use for state funds. We currently have over $660 of our federal funds in the bank account with ODOT that's available to exchange. At the current exchange rate of 94 cents on the dollar, that gives us $625,000 worth of spending power. Now, the important thing here is that the exchange rate as of January 1st is going to drop to 90 cents on the dollar. And that would reduce our spending power by about $26,000. So we would like to use as much of that money as we can while the exchange rate is favorable. And in order to do that, there's an intergovernmental agreement that is for the 3 years. And we would like to use this money for the second phase of the paving that we talked about a few minutes ago. Tonight in this request for action, we're not requesting to expend that money. We're just requesting approval of the agreement so that we can set up this funding mechanism and have it available. Are there any questions?
Any questions, councilors?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. So Trish, in this contract with ODOT, it says that the use of the grant funds can be used for preliminary engineering. We've just done some of that. Can we use some of these funds as a reimbursement for some of the costs of that engineering?
On future engineering work, we can, because these expenses have already occurred before we execute the agreement. We can't.
Okay. Okay. And is there any timeline as to when we could expect ODOT to respond to something like this? I tried to phrase it nicely.
You have a history here, Councilor?
I am very hesitant to offer a guess.
Well, I mean, I'm concerned because if it changes January 1st, they have no incentive to let us do it now. They could wait till January 1st to respond.
Sometimes.
So, I mean, hopefully there's somebody that you can talk to directly in terms of getting it moved along, perhaps.
I will do my best, and I understand the concern. From conversations I've had with ODOT staff, they are motivated that they want this money to be spent because it doesn't do the public any good to have it sitting in a bank account. So they would like to see this money used.
And we'll be positive about it.
Yes.
Thank you.
So does it lock it in when they receive the application?
Does it lock what
Do we lock in a priority on the grant to be able to have it reviewed or looked at if they don't get to it in a timely fashion?
That would be our argument. If for some reason they didn't get it back to us by January 1st, we would point to them and say, that's on you, not on us.
Mm-hmm.
We want the more favorable exchange rate.
Okay.
With ODOT, but we'll do the best we can.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I think that this is something that I could also bring up to the Transportation Committee that I'm a part of because ODOT sits on that board. So I would be happy to remind them we have an application in there. That might be helpful.
Thank you.
Very good.
Mr. Mayor, I have one question. So it says that we can buy equipment. Is that true? As long as it applies to what the road stuff that we're going to work on? Is that, am I reading that right?
Yes, but if we use the money to buy equipment, the agreement says we can only use that equipment just for streets projects.
Yes,
We
yeah,
wouldn't
that-
be able to share
okay.
it with parks or anything else.
Yeah. Well, we don't want to share with them anyway.
Any other questions? Council directive.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to allow staff to execute the IGA and exchange funds as eligible expenses are identified.
I'll second it.
I have a motion second, but roll call, please.
Yes.
Counselor Richards,
Yes.
Mayor Mahler,
Yes.
Counselor Gerson,
Yes.
Counselor Trask,
Yes.
Counselor Gorley,
Yes.
Counselor Coleman.
Yes.
Let the record show you have 7 ayes with no nays. Approval of the Surface Transportation Block Grant Fund Exchange Program. Next up, informational only stormwater TMDL implementation plan.
At our last meeting, we included a letter that we received from the state. We told you Trish was doing some homework, and now Trish is going to present the result of all of that hard work.
So you've read the letter, and in a nutshell, the federal government, the EPA, has written a new rule for reducing mercury in the water bodies in Oregon. And it is the state DEQ's responsibility to implement that and make sure that all of the local governments are following the new rule. So they are requiring us to update our 5-year plan to make sure that it aligns with the new rule. And they have invited us to coordinate with our DEQ staff person assigned to Sweet Home. And she's very helpful. I have no concerns calling her up, and she's going to go through our plan with us and review specifically what do these rules mean to Sweet Home? How will it affect Sweet Home? How can I help you write a conforming plan? For your review, I've included the last annual update of our 5-year plan that we provided to DEQ last year. These annual updates are due at the end of May every year. And this was a plan that council adopted, and we've had to revise some of the timelines based on staff capacity and available funding. After we submitted this annual report to DEQ last year, they gave us back about a dozen questions, which we then had to answer. They didn't just rubber stamp it. They were really into the details, making sure we're doing what we said we would do. And if we couldn't, why not? How are we going to address it to get these things done? After answering their questions, they sent us an acceptance letter, which very politely but firmly it made it clear that they expect results from Sweet Home. And a lot of, when people think of stormwater, a lot of people think about the pipes and they think about flooding. When DEQ thinks about stormwater, they're thinking about water quality. And so in our plan, there are a lot more things in it than just boots on the ground. It's also got zoning code, riparian protection, erosion control, working with the Watershed Council, public outreach, all sorts of things. So it's a very broad topic, and the bigger that Sweet Home gets, the more involved DEQ is going to get. Along with all of this, the letter from DEQ informing us about this new rule and having to update our plan and the annual report, we also just got a call earlier today from another guy at DEQ, something about renewing our 1200 CA construction permit. So DEQ is definitely getting involved. They are becoming more proactive about stormwater, and we are investigating with them what this construction permit will entail and what that means for us. But this is a broad topic, and it affects multiple departments, public works and planning. So I would encourage council, please, as you go into the budget season, to review this 5-year plan so that you can be refreshed on the funding that is needed to implement these. Thank you. Are there questions?
Any questions, counselors?
Mr. Mayor? So what you're saying is that we need to increase our stormwater charge, and you're not saying that, but that's what you want to say. I understand.
I will defer that question to Public Works Director Springman.
Very good, Trish.
And I can take it over to the finance guy.
Nice punt, Trish. Nice.
Related to stormwater, we know we've got pipe issues, but on the regulatory side, DEQ isn't going away. For whatever reason, we are close to that 10,000 mark. We are a little city that's becoming big. And I do believe that there's probably going to be more coming down the road. We could eventually even see potential monitoring at our wastewater plant for mercury as a part of this. So we could actually see something on our permit on the wastewater side as well. So just keep it in mind that things are starting to happen for us. There's nothing major that's coming down the pike, but I think we need to keep it in mind that we've got not only infrastructure problems, but we're going to have DEQ here potentially asking us to do some things, and that'll increase over the years as we get bigger. So,
over the years, we've had quite a few naughty letters and fine threats, so it is something to take serious when it comes budget season. Any other questions? Moving on to information only, wastewater treatment plant upgrade project updated schedule.
I'm kind of starting to think I could just go home and we could hand it to Trish. So, yeah, we have some updated information for you regarding the wastewater treatment plant upgrade project. So Trish is going to update you.
Brandon, is there a chance we can get that on the screen?
There sure is. Somewhere in this stack. It's a little small. Sorry.
Small. Okay. Our engineer, Murray Smith, has recently provided us an updated project schedule for the wastewater plant design. And things are still plugging along. We are about halfway through the 90% design. Things did get moved back a couple of months, partially due to COVID and partially due to the value engineering study was a little bit delayed, and we got that done around Christmas time. So currently, our engineer expects that 90% design should be done in July. Contract documents should be ready in November, bidding in January, and construction March of 22 through February of 24.
Any questions? Thank you, Trish, and keep up the good work.
Thank you,
You
Council.
did a good job. Moving on. April 2021 is Child Abuse Prevention Month and Prevention Awareness Month. At this time, I have a proclamation to read. Proclamation, April 2021, Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month. Whereas children are valued in Lynn County and should live in a safe, healthy home, and whereas in 2019, 18.2%, 5,051 Lynn County children 0 to 17 were living in poverty. 20.9%, 5,840 were found insecure, and 5.2%, 1,180 students were homeless. And whereas preventing child abuse and neglect in this community value that depends on the involvement of people community-wide in order to provide access to the resources and needed for safe, healthy living. And whereas child abuse and neglect not only directly harms children, but also increases the likelihood of health problems, poor education performance, substance abuse, and early pregnancy. These problems can compound themselves as a child becomes an adult. The abuse and neglect are far-reaching, with no social economic group immune, and children of all races and ethnicities are victims. Child abuse is a total community problem affecting all levels of society, and whereas there were 533 substantiated cases of child abuse and neglect in Lynn County during 2019, whereas During 2019, there were 23 Oregon children who died from causes related to familial, caregiver abuse, and the neglect. 17 of those who died were 5 years old or younger, with 12 of these 17 being less than 1 year old. And whereas, therefore, I, Greg Muller, Mayor, do hereby proclaim April as Child Abuse Prevention Month and call upon all citizens, community agencies, faith groups, medical facilities, elected leaders, and businesses to increase their participation in our efforts to support families, thereby preventing child abuse and strengthening the communities in which we live. Proclaim this 23rd day of March 2021. Next, request for council action, resolution number 11 for 2021, Sweet Home Public Library Policy Manual.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is on page 130 of your packet. The library board has been working for several months to update the policy manual. The old policy manual was originally adopted in 1993 and was last updated in 2013. The board's been working for some time. At their meeting on March 11th, they reviewed this last version of the document and unanimously have recommended council adopt it. And as many times as they and staff have looked at it, Councilor Gersten already pointed out a couple of typos that we wanted to fix. They're pretty minor. One being we need to update the members of the Library Advisory Board would be the big one. So we would ask that you please consider and adopt the updated library policy manual.
Questions of councilors? Okay, council directive.
So, Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the library policy.
Second that.
I have a motion second by roll call, please.
Counselor Coleman,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Richards,
Yes.
Mayor Mahler,
Yes.
Counselor Gerson,
Yes.
Counselor Trask,
Yes.
Counselor Gorley.
Yes.
Let the record show you have 7 ayes with no nays. Approval of resolution number 11 for 2021. There is no ordinances, first, second, or third. Reports of committees. Any report from committees?
So, Mr. Mayor, Charter Committee did not meet today because we didn't have a quorum, because we have a few people not feeling well and one out on vacation. So we will meet next month.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I sit on the Council of Governments, and there was a couple things that were pretty important to me that I heard. I was excited to hear that I think they have an $80 million annual budget, so some projects can be taken advantage of in respective cities that are on that council. I also heard that Community Services Consortium is receiving an additional $15 million for rental assistance, and they have energy assistance for COVID pandemic and water assistance for COVID pandemic, and not a lot of people are hearing about that funding. So I am happy to report that back and hope that the people of the town can use some of those services.
Very good, Councilor Genesis. Any other thing on the committee members? Okay. Moving on, mayor's report. Just as a reminder for all city councilors, if you hadn't got your memo, there's an ethics filing you need to do with the state of Oregon. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that's April 15th. It has to be turned in. Any questions, you can ask one of your fellow councilors, or you can get with Julie or Ray with any help or questions you have with that filing.
Yeah, I'd recommend not Ray.
Probably a good recommendation.
Also, I met with County Commissioner Sherry Springer here last week. Very briefly, but I reiterated our council goals and our direction we would like to go with our community. It was a very good meeting, very short. She expressed that she was fully in support of anything that we like to do, and that any questions or you may have or anything she could be of help with, please give her a call. She was more than willing to meet with any of the counselors, and she was very open to what we were trying to accomplish in Sweet Home. A reminder, Cityscape meeting this Thursday, 6 p.m. in the council chambers. I think that if any council members are going to be attending, you got to remind the city because of potential quorum, and we got to make notice for the media. So other than that, moving on now to city manager's report.
Just a note for the council, we did notice a potential quorum, so you're all more than welcome to attend and take part in that, whether it's in person or remote. So we're all in the clear for that. So far, we have received 6 applications for our library services director. I'm told they are a very promising pool of applicants. We will do our first actual review on April 5th. We have set our executive team work session. It looks like April 14th through 16th. So all of the department heads and a few other members of management will not be available during that time frame. Training will include a lot of some HR topics, as well as developing annual work plans, all based on preliminary budget meetings, and of course your council goals. City Hall, library, and court staff all met last week regarding departmental goals and staff goals, and we are working to align what they view as their goals with the goals that you, the council, have set, and with the goals that the department heads have set. So hopefully we'll continue to move forward on that, and that will carry into the work plan. So with that, that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Any questions of councils? Moving on to department directors' reports. Police Chief Lynn has got something to present to this evening.
I appreciate the opportunity to provide some additional information. In your packets is our department for the month of February, actually. A couple things I wanted to point out and kind of clarify and provide a little bit more information. One's on our traffic and traffic concerns that have been noted around town. I know during our council training that was in February, one of the items that I mentioned that we hadn't performed well at was addressing the concerns of traffic enforcement within our community. And I had vowed to make some improvements in that area. And so I wanted to kind of give you an update on what some of those have been. We were fortunate in a way with our reduced staffing level at this point. We have saved some funds that we can redirect towards some traffic enforcement. So what that has entailed is we've actually opened up some overtime slots a couple times a week so that we can focus officers just on traffic enforcement in some priority areas. One, downtown corridor, we've all known have had concerns. And the second one we've been focusing on is First Avenue as well, between Holly Road and Main Street. And so I just wanted to provide some kind of updated stats compared to last year on what we're doing. We're trying to move the needle, like I had indicated in the training. Compared to last year, our traffic stops, according to, from same day to same day, today to today of 2020, our stops were up 45% increase. We went from, in 2020, 253 traffic stops to now 367 traffic stops this year. So the officers are really trying to focus on a lot of those concerns that the community has, and again, trying to just be present and make an impact on that. So kind of wanted to give a little bit of an update on that. And as I alluded to, another topic was staffing. And we have been short-staffed for a significant period of time, as we kind of talked about in council training as well. It's presented some other opportunities. We've hired a couple officers. Steve Carlson that was hired and many of you met, you know, he has finally completed his training and is out on his own. So that gives us a little wiggle room for certain tasks. And Ian Mason, our newest officer, he graduates from the police academy Thursday. And so he has about 2 months left in his field training program, and we're excited for him to finish that and get out on his own. And that kind of brings us to a topic of, as we're still have 2 open positions that we're trying to fill. Currently, we're at 13 bodies at the police department, and we're authorized for 15 in this budget cycle. So we're still trying to recruit and hire two positions as soon as we can find qualified, and we have an open process going on. But we're leading into a time where we can start focusing on that restructuring that we had discussed in the council training. Would be extremely beneficial to transfer our structure from how we currently sit with a 4-sergeant model underneath me to myself, a captain, and 2 sergeants. So we'd be reducing 1 supervisory position, and we would have a captain and 2 sergeants under me rather than the 4 sergeants. As Brandon has helped our department, this move is essentially cost neutral. What we pay increase for a captain is we're saving by removing that other sergeant position as well. There's a couple reasons I'd like to move forward with the restructuring sooner rather than later. And one is really we're going to be coming up to some opportunities for that position. And I view that position as my potential replacement, as you all know, or most know, that, you know, I'm looking at just slightly over 3 years and I'll be eligible to retire, and that's my hope and my intent is at that time. And so this could potentially be a replacement, and that really the succession planning, I'll be quite honest, we haven't always done that the greatest with succession planning here in Sweet Home. And I think this is one way we can really improve on that. It would give the council and the city manager an opportunity to relate to and judge the merits of the person that could potentially be in that captain slot to see if they're a fit for when my position opens up. And again, with that, there's other opportunities that are coming up from negotiations with the union. All these type of things are training opportunities that would help us lead somebody into a potential successor role for me, and hopefully be better than myself. So really, and that's really what we want to do, is hire people that are gonna outshine us in the end and continue to take our departments to a little better place than where we are now.
Any questions of council?
So I have a question, but it doesn't relate to that particularly. But in your graph on your First Avenue speeding, it looks like most people are complying with the speed limit, right? Although it seems to be between 26 and 30, you get a little hefty on the gas. I understand that. But most people are not really overly speeding through that property. But it appears, it's perceived as though they're speeding. Is that correct? I mean, is that what we're looking at with this?
Oh, I think so. In my opinion, specifically on First Avenue, if you'll see, the volume of traffic is really heavy, and it has been a lot. And it has been throughout the years. And for those who sat on the previous traffic safety committees, First Avenue was a topic, for the first 5 years of my tenure here. And so that is a lot of it, the perception. And standing by a road and you see a vehicle coming by, you often lose sight of really, they appear to be going faster than they are. I think if I recall the graph itself, 97% of the vehicles that were traveling between 0 and 30 miles an hour. So right. 5 over, so it's 80. Oh, well, I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see that anyway. So 81% were 25 miles an hour or less, and that's just based on my memory. And so, but I agree. There is still, based on the number of, based on the volume of traffic, there are still a significant amount of speeders on First Avenue that we're trying to address. And we've kind of highlighted certain areas of time that we're trying to get officers there to. We anticipate that's only a handful of violators that are significantly going over that we're trying to focus on and address.
Is there any plan to think about cutting the volume down by making it
Well, there
a
actually
dead-end
is,
street
and
or something?
and maybe Mayor Mahler or Councilor Trask, who sat on the Traffic Safety Committee, can also shed some light on it. You know, we did a significant amount of work and study on First Avenue, and it actually has came to council at one point in time. One of the proposed methods to reduce some of that was to install, speed tables or speed bumps. Yeah. I'm not sure what their technical terms are, but that was one issue or one proposed solution to try to deter the amount of the volume of traffic going down First Avenue, because it's used as a cut through from 228 to Main Street. Very few people actually go down to the light, which was probably what is anticipated in the design of much of this. And so we could always look at revisiting some of that. I can't recall the costs associated with the speed tables or the speed bumps. There's some drawbacks to them, but it's something we could look at again.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the history of part of that is that Chief Lynn did they put the machine down there and saw that the speeding on First Avenue was really not the problem. It was about the same probably number as it is right now, maybe less now than it was then. But by putting cars on both sides of the street, if you don't slow down, you're going to swipe somebody, and it bugs the dickens out of me, but it works. And having the sign there really works too. And and the speed bumps did come out, but my concern about that was, okay, we put them on First Avenue, we're going to put them on Elm Street or Fifth Avenue, or because it would come up. And and if I remember, Mike was telling us that they were not cheap.
They weren't cheap, and the concern was possibly causing wreck.
Yeah.
And the other part, well, that's why they have parking on both sides of the street, was for that reason, to slow things down. The only concern I brought up at the council, I remember back then, was, and I still have a little bit of concern, but it really hasn't been that big of an issue, was people pulling out of their driveways. We have a lot of blind spots on First. So when you have cars on both sides of the street, it slows traffic down, but you're pulling out with trees and a lot of obstacles. You can't see somebody coming. So my concern was somebody pulling out and getting sideswiped, but that an issue. So
First Avenue is tricky just because of where it's located at and how people are using it.
Yeah. And the other question is just a little bit off of First Avenue, is we were going to put up traffic speed signs down Main.
Those are actually, they are currently working on them today, redesigning the method that they're actually going to be hung up from or attached to the poles from. So they're all laid out in a public works shop right now, and the mechanic is fabricating some improved hanging mechanism. I don't know what else you would call it, but it's improved ways to hang them on the poles that are safer for the installation.
And Mr. Mayor, Greg, you have a spot picked out to put those. Is that not true?
Yeah, they were already predetermined through the permit process, and we worked those out with ODOT.
So the speed limit changes drastically at 18th Avenue. Actually, before that, by McDonald's, it goes to 25, I believe, and it's like there's no sign there.
Yeah, I think we chose locations in each zones.
Yeah.
25, 35, and then 45.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
So does putting up the radars help with, I see that it would help with traffic awareness of how fast they're driving. Does it also help the people in that community become more aware of who is speeding and who isn't, because they're assuming so many people are speeding? It seems like it would give them a peace of mind, that maybe there is speeding, but not as bad as they think it is.
Right. I know we have had contact with one individual on First Avenue and actually sent the data that was pulled from the radar trailer to him just for his information, since he had been concerned about it. Maybe the city manager has, but I have not heard from him since that time.
Okay.
No, I haven't. He sent us a message expressing his concerns. We responded, we put out the trailer, we got the information, we shared the information with him, told him what we observed in the information, and that we haven't heard anything else since then.
But that radar trailer is being used quite a bit. You'll see it moving around town. We have a list of streets and areas with concern. Currently, it's at 10th Avenue, and we're collecting data. It'll be there for a short period of time, and then I believe it's going out on maybe 45th, somewhere out that area of time. And so the community service officer has a running list of areas in town that have citizen concerns that we'll pull data on.
I thought we had 2 that we had purchased.
Those are the, this is a trailer. It's a radar mounted on the trailer that we've had for like 20 years. And Public Works was able to get it back up and running again for us, which we really appreciate. But we also have 4 radar signs that have been purchased, and they're the ones that will be on Main Street right now.
Okay. And they're not going to be moved around from Main Street when we get them?
They're, the way it was described to me, their new mounting method will be more permanent than we had initially anticipated, but that's simply from a safety standpoint. The way they had been mounted on walls, one of the Public Works employees was nearly injured installing it because it had actually fallen off of the attachment mechanism. I'm making some of this up. The attachment mechanism. However, it was being held up. I just know that somebody was about injured.
You didn't work Public Works.
So you have.
I can simplify this real quick. On our local poles, we have a little bit more leniency in how we apply those and put them on our poles. ODOT has specific requirements that they need to be 7 feet above, so there's head clearance. The fact that we can go up and put them up easily with our equipment, but when we start going above 6-7 feet, they're extremely heavy, awkward, and so we're taking all that into consideration so the staff doesn't get hurt.
So there's 4 of them. Is that 2 on each side going, east to west?
That's the intent, how they'll be set up currently.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, Greg, I thought we bought those 4 just for Main Street, and I thought we had some for the side streets too. Is that not true?
We had 2 additional ones that were a different model that we use and that we have put up, but we've had some issues with the battery length on those that we're working with the manufacturer.
So will there
we
be
have
some?
actually 6.
So there'll be some on the side streets.
Yes.
Okay, that's right. Good.
If we can get the issues worked out.
Yes. Yeah, and that's fine.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jeff. Keep up the good work. Any other questions of our department directors? City Attorney, anything? Okay. Council business, good order. Councilor Richards, have you got a few minutes after meeting? I appreciate that. Not anything else. We will go ahead and adjourn at 8:28.